So first of all, on behalf of Coatesville Youth Initiative, I want to welcome all of you here. I also want to make a special welcome to Mr. James Monteiro, because you are giving us your time and we appreciate that. And we definitely want to hear your story and all the wonderful work that you're doing. So without any further ado, I want to hand it over to you to kind of introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you, Angelique. Also wanted to say thank you to Jarvis and the whole Coatesville staff for doing this, along with the youth participants who are taking part in the program. I was told a while ago, when somebody asks you to do something, as long as it's positive, you should make every effort to honor that, especially because of the blessings and the second chances that I've received. It's only right to reciprocate and give that back when so many people have done the same for me. So thank you. It's an honor to be here, and thank you all for your time also. I had watched a movie a while ago. And I'm dating myself right now. It's called Coach Carter. But one of the things that stood out to me is the quote that one of the young boys said near the end of the movie. It's that we were all meant to shine. And as we begin to shine, we unconsciously give others the right to also. And I didn't realize this growing up. It's like, you have gifts, you have talents, but at the same time, sometimes because of our living environments and because of what we're exposed to growing up, we tend to basically play those down. So for me, I was gifted in school. I didn't really have a problem academically. I just didn't see the connection between education and success. So I dropped out of school in the 8th grade. My brother had dropped out, and as soon as I saw my brother drop out, he was older than me. I had made the decision that I was going to drop out as soon as I was able to also, as soon as I reached the age of 16. I dropped out of school basically at 15. They passed me through middle school, even though I wasn't supposed to pass. And when it came time for me to go to high school, I just never showed up. As a result of that decision, I dropped out of school. Not only did I drop out of school, I moved out of my mother's house and I moved in with an older woman who exposed me to a lot of things that I should not have been exposed to at that time. And as a result of that decision, I ended up spending the next 20 years of my life incarcerated up and down the East Coast. Um, I always like to say that the first time I was incarcerated was enough for me. It was something like, this is not for me. I don't want this. I don't want to end up back here. But upon release, I always had little to nothing to stand on but an 8th grade education. I might be able to get a dishwashing job, or I might get lucky and be able to get a warehouse job. And the issue was I was getting older. And for me to be able to sustain myself, and I wanted to have a family, be able to sustain a family. I definitely wanted a girlfriend, sustain having a girlfriend. These type of positions did not allow me to be able to do that. So I was ended up trying to compensate my income and ended up going right back to prison. The last time I was incarcerated, my thinking went more so to, okay, before it was like, how am I going to get out of prison? The last time it was like, okay, how am I going to stay out of prison? So my thinking went from more so to where as though, how would I be able to sustain myself? So I ended up going back to school. I got my GED, and then I got my associate's degree, and then I sat around the prison for another 2.5 years waiting to be released in order to go further. My thinking was that if I get my education, right, I came up with this saying, it was more education would equal more money, would equal more freedom. And it wasn't necessarily physical freedom that I was thinking about. It was more so freedom of choices. I had realized how, without having an education, I put myself in a box and I had little to no choices upon release. So my thinking was that if I get my education, I would be able to get out of prison and maybe become a licensed clinical social worker or working the social services field, because this is a lot of the issues that brought me to prison in the first place. It's also, during my research, a field that I saw that I can get into. So I had gone back to school, and it's crazy because the way I went back to school is I registered for classes as if I wasn't incarcerated. It was an online school. I would call my girlfriend on the phone, and I would have her uh, log into the online system, and I would proceed to give her the answers to the quizzes and the tests that I would have to take online. When it came time for me to write my papers, I would write my papers and send them into the college. And when it came time for me to take midterms and finals, they sent the midterms and finals up to the GED professor at the prison, and he proctored my exams, and that's how I got my associate's degree. Upon release, it was a very scary time for me because I was coming back from Baltimore to Rhode Island, and I just didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know if it would work for me. You have all of these things that begin to play in your mind, like once a convict, always a convict, or I'll never be able to get a job. These are messages that we end up receiving outside of ourselves, and these are messages that I internalized. So I wasn't sure. And I remember upon release, I had went to the store to buy a sandwich. They had these big sub sandwiches at this corner store that I loved. And I went to the store and I was presented with two paths. I had seen an individual that I had known growing up, and he was like, "James, when did you get back?" And I basically told him I had been released probably around 3 weeks ago. And he offered me, he said, what are you doing for money? And he offered me something to sell for him in order to make money. And then there was the individual that I was buying the sandwich off in the store. He's like, "When did you get back?" I said, "About 3 weeks ago." I said, "Man, I'm struggling out here. I really don't know where my place is. I don't know where I'm going to fit in. I just know I don't want to go backwards." And he gave me two names. He gave me an individual's name, Sal Monteiro, that I used to go to school with, who was running a program at a place called the Nonviolence Institute that deals with street gangs and street violence and intervention. And he gave me the name of an individual, Barry O'Connor, who I went to school with also. And we played basketball together on the CYO team. And instead of me taking the path of this individual giving me some stuff to sell for him, I decided to go the other route, and I went and connected with Sal. Sal ended up getting me a job at the Nonviolence Institute. And then I went and spoke to Barry, and Barry worked at the financial aid department at the Community College of Rhode Island. And it was my intention to go back to school, because with each level of education you get, the more money you will make, and the less likely you will be unemployed. And I went to see Barry, and this is the craziest thing, because when I went to school, me and Barry went to middle school together. We played basketball together. I was the point guard. Barry was the forward. He was taller than me. He had wider body, so he played in the middle. But he was running the whole financial aid department at CCRI. It wasn't that he was working there. Everybody in that department worked for him. And the crazy thing was that when we were in school together, my grades were better than Barry's. Barry was not the best of students. We would play basketball. We would end up down Thayer Street, which is Brown University. And Barry was always starting trouble because he was like the big jock athlete. And we were always getting in fights because of Barry. And here he was sitting across from me at CCRI, suit and tie, making a really good amount of money, running the financial aid department, helping me to get back into school. And my only question for him was, how the heck did you do that? How the heck did you turn your circumstances around? Because me and Barry come from the same humble beginnings. Barry has had issues growing up, just as I have had issues growing up. But here Barry was sitting behind the desk running the financial aid department. And Barry leaned back in his chair and says, "What do you mean?" He says, I said, "Barry, how did you change the trajectory of your life? And how did you end up there?" And he said, James, the more letters I got behind my name, the less my background and where I came from mattered. And to me, it was like a light bulb moment, because all the messages that I used to receive were as though I would never succeed. Once a criminal, always a criminal. I will never be able to rise above a dishwashing or a warehouse job, became lies. Whereas though it was sitting right in front of me that if I applied myself, if I went to school, if I went in and I put in the same effort, and I could come out and end up right where Barry was. And at some point, I realized that it was less about people telling me that, and it was more so about that's what I was telling myself. So the light bulb moment was for me, was there it was standing right in front of me, that success was possible as long as long as I was willing to put the effort and work into achieving it. I worked full time at the Nonviolence Institute. Sal had got me a job. From there, I worked part time for a place called OIC. I had got married really quickly because my equation for being successful out of prison was I just wanted to make $30,000 a year, have a good woman, and if we were working together, I would be able to make it happen. Because I realized in this day and age, it takes two. And if you have two people who are committed to each other, working at the same team, there's nothing that I wouldn't be able to achieve. So I had got married really quickly coming home. Part-time at full-time at the Institute, part-time at OIC. We got pregnant really quickly. So when I would come home, my wife would be like, here's your baby. When I came home from work and I had gotten back into school, I had went to school full-time. And in a year and a half, I had my bachelor's degree. And the crazy thing about it is, you see things working in other people, you hope they'll work for you, but at the same time, you're filled with doubt. You're not sure. You have these unsureties if it'll work for you. Uh, I was working for grants, according to grants. The Nonviolence Institute lost a lot of money off their budget, like $1 million off their budget, where 10 of us had gotten laid off. OIC's grant funding had ran out, and this was all around the time that I had finished my coursework to get my bachelor's degree. And out of everybody that got laid off from the Nonviolence Institute, I had applied for this place called the Providence Center as a case manager working for substance abuse addicted people, and I ended up getting the job. And when I went to the interview, the lady asked me, she loved my resume. She understood I had lived experience. I had the qualifications. She asked me, she said, do you have your bachelor's degree? I said, yes, I do. She said, good, I can hire you then. And the reason why she said that is because to work for this agency, and when they hire a case manager to work for this agency, they bill people's insurance companies. And the only way that they can bill the insurance companies is if the person hired has a minimum qualification of a bachelor's degree. So I realized right then and there how if I had not met that requirement in education, I would have not qualified for that position, and I would have not gotten that job, even though she loved my resume, she loved my lived experience. But by me having that, now I had choices. Now I realized, wow, I'm able to compete at higher levels of employment, and it actually worked for me. In that job, I made more money than I made working for both of the other jobs that I worked for. And what it did was it enabled me to have a little bit of freedom. Freedom where though now, today, I have choices. While working there, I always believe in faith. I always believe if you're doing the right thing, no matter what, the right thing will come back to you. Another individual called me and asked me to come apply there, and it was for the college that I had graduated from. And I ended up leaving the job at the Providence Center, and I made more money at the job that I was going to now. I worked there for a while. I started a youth program in my childhood neighborhood that provides workforce development and enrichment opportunities to youth age 15 through 21. We were donated a building, we raised a lot of money, and we employ kids every summer. I also started a beauty salon in my neighborhood. I there was no Black businesses, and this is something that I had always wanted to do. I wanted to own a business, even though I know nothing about doing hair, but I just wanted to have a business in my neighborhood that was minority owned and from somebody in the community. So I started a beauty salon, and I started to have what I like to call financial freedom. Me and my wife bought another house, and it was less about me struggling and more so I just had freedom. And then I was sitting around, looking around, I was like, well, if I have freedom now, I feel as though once we have freedom, it's only right to want that for somebody else. And I started looking around, and then I was like, I need to go back and help the other ones that are also struggling. So I started a program to help currently informed and incarcerated people finish post-secondary education that they started behind prison walls once they're released. I wrote a couple of grants, and I was contacted by John Legend's people, and they ended up giving us our first seed funding to start this program. Today, we've raised close to around $900,000 for this program, and I am currently providing educational resources and support for 150 people that have been criminally involved in the criminal justice system, just like I was. Uh, and I can honestly say that I guess, I don't know, I guess I'm grateful. I'm grateful because this is not where I thought I would be, but at the same time, by me going down this path, it's ended me up right where I'm supposed to be. I'm a firm believer in that everything you go through in life prepares you for what you are to become. And we are all destined for some sort of greatness as long as we reach for the stars. Um, and yeah, I don't really know what else to say. I'm grateful to be here. I have a second chance on life, and it's only right to want to be able to do something for others with that. I will say this though. This is one thing that I determined, and you guys are young, so you'll probably understand this, maybe you won't. There was an equation that I did while in prison, and one of the classes that they took, they asked us, "What do you want your tombstone to say?" And for me, I had looked back on my life like I've done nothing with my life. And it's kind of messed up when you look back on your life and you're asking yourself, what have you accomplished? What have you achieved? What have you contributed to life? And one of the things that I did was I ended up doing a mathematical equation. It was like, if I gave everybody right now $30,000, would you know what to do with it? And the question is basically, uh, most people, once you reach a certain age, you know you won't blow $30,000 because $30,000 is not a lot of money, and it's not something that you could retire on. I was coming home from prison, so I just needed about $10,000 to pretty much get an apartment, get a car, and all this other stuff. But $30,000 it really would have set me up pretty nice. So I know if I was given $30,000, I know I wouldn't blow this money on partying. I know exactly what to do with it. And then for some reason, I asked myself, and I don't know why, but I think it was because we're used to marking off calendars because you're doing time and you mark off calendars. And I was like, if I live to be 80 years old, and for a black man, that's not always a reality. But if I live to be 80 years old, do I know how many days that I've spent on this planet? And it roughly came out to about 29,500. It's 365 times 80. And just like, and the understanding was just like $30,000 is not a lot of money. I know what to do with $30,000 if you gave it to me. I wouldn't blow it. I wouldn't waste it. 30,000 days is not a lot of time. And in my mind, what was I going to do with it? I had wasted approximately 15,000 days of my life going in and out of prison. So right now, when I came home from prison, the understanding was that I had little time to waste. And every day I'm going to try to do something to work towards my goals to make sure that I leave something in this life that is other than just for me. I always say that it's not what you accumulate, acquire, achieve in this lifetime that will make you great. It's more so, what are you going to leave behind? What's your legacy going to be? And for me, in this date and time, it is my children. It is an organization that provides help to youth that are struggling in the same age that I did, which is Billy Taylor House. And it's help to people who are currently informally incarcerated, who are looking to change their lives and get back on track and have some sort of freedom. So I really don't have too much else to say. If people have questions or people want to ask me something, that's fine. I just want to say thank you for your time, and hopefully you understand where I'm coming from and you got something from this message. We're all meant to shine. There's no sense of playing your gifts down. Everybody has something to offer, and everybody has something to contribute to life. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions? I have a couple, but I want to open it up to the floor. Open up the floor to anybody if they have a question.
It's always tough.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, hold on, give me 1 second. There you go. You're muted, I got you.
Oh, I was just saying hello.
Oh,
Okay.
But I agree with what you were saying, and I thank you for talking. I just got this email this morning, Angelique. My daughter was in Coatesville Youth Initiative 2 years ago, Ginny. I don't know if you remember her.
Of course.
But anyway, I work at Voya Financial, and we're a financial services company that, I've often wondered, how do people make that transition, without all those letters behind their names, like you said, because that definitely lends credence out of the working world. And I definitely think this is a fantastic program. And I think that's the right way to go. Education is empowerment, and it helps to raise people up in authority, positions of authority and power. And I think that's fantastic. And I think you're right. People look at people differently when they have gone through, particularly university. They've written, they've read, and it makes them well-spoken or discerning. And I think that's fabulous. I love hearing about this program. And by the way, you definitely picked up a Rhode Island accent.
Right.
I could hear it.
Well, I was born in Germany, but I was raised here in Rhode Island. I had moved to Maryland, and then ended up relocating back home. So.
Okay, yeah, you can hear it.
Yeah, some people in Rhode Island say I have a Maryland accent. It depends sometimes. Right. Yeah.
This is actually a picture from Block Island. I was
Oh, wow.
there 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Never been there before.
Yeah, a lot of family on Block Island.
Good.
Yeah, fishermen. Thank you.
Does anyone else have questions? Okay, I have a question. I have some questions. So, my first question is, so what would be some, because you said some of the stuff happened when you were younger. So if you could have younger James in front of you, what would be some advice you would give yourself?
My grandmother was one of those women who would give you like one-line zingers and leave you with it. She wouldn't explain it. She would just give it to you, and you were expected to figure it out. And she always told me that a slow nickel beats a fast dime. And I didn't understand it at the time, because I always thought there was a rush. There was a rush in everything that I wanted to do. And basically she was saying that fast money doesn't equate to slow money. And my son's mother had told me this a while ago. She said, James, everything that I got from hustling, I don't know where any of that is today. I have nothing. She said, but everything that I've gotten from working for, I can still account for that today. And that's one of the things I would tell myself. The other thing I would tell myself is that I have nothing to, and I tell this to my kids all the time, I have nothing to prove to anybody else but myself. I have nothing to prove. I always tell my kids, you have nothing to prove to anybody else but yourself. And I think when I was younger, my insecurities, I was the youngest in the family. Um, my insecurities always led me to look outside of myself for validation because I really didn't understand how or equate how to validate and basically value myself. Uh, and I think my achievements since then have shown me that I do have value, that I do have worth. So those are two things that stand out to me.
Great.
Mhm.
My next question, I think we have some. Okay, so Anna Marie would like to ask, she says, James, you are so poised. Were you always so poised?
I don't know about that. I don't know if I'm poised now. I just have a better understanding of self. And they told me this a while ago. This is you can mess around in your 20s, but when you're 30, you better figure it out. And I wish I would have done it younger. So I guess for me, it's just I have a certain level of acceptance with where I'm at now, with who I am. I didn't really know that growing up. I allowed other people or what I had to define me. And when you go to prison, you lose everything. It's like you're stripped. So your career doesn't define you. Uh, your clothes don't define you. The type of car you have doesn't define you anymore. And you really have to start to look within and ask yourself, who am I? And what defines me? And what I've come to realize is that that's how I treat myself and that's how I treat others. That's what defines me today. So if I'm poised, it's more so because I have a certain level of self-acceptance now that allows me to be okay with who I am. So other people have no choice but to either. So that's the kicker with it, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have some parents in here as well. So what would your advice be for parents and grandparents with younger people, maybe even if they're going down a wrong path or if they're on that tipping point?
I was fortunate. My mother passed a year and a half ago. And I was fortunate because I was away in and out of prison for 20 years. But I was fortunate. I'm the baby of the family. My brother and my mother are always bumping heads. My sister and my mother are so much alike. My sister loved my mother to death, but it was hard for them to be around each other sometimes. And I was the one that was fortunate enough to be able to take care of my mother and help her through her transition. My mother loved me until I loved myself. She never gave up on me. There was a hard balance between enabling somebody and loving somebody from a distance, and this is something that my mother had to learn how to do. But she never gave up on me, and I am my mother's prayers. So for parents who have youth who are struggling, understand sometimes you have to love youth from a distance, but at the same time, there's that balance between not giving up on them. My mother always knew that the stuff that I was going through, she knew that wasn't me. And she was right. It's crazy because when I was younger, my mother used to take me to these poetry readings, and I used to be like, oh God, mommy, please do not take me to this poetry reading. My mother was on the front lines of the women's rights movement when I was younger in the 70s. And she would be on the news and they would be like, downtown, what do we want? Women's rights. When do we want it now? My mother would be on the front lines and sometimes she would be on TV and my friends used to ridicule me for it. And it's crazy because now I write poetry. I do spoken word. And now, as far as activism, I'm on the front lines. So all the things that I used to be embarrassed about my mother for, that my friends used to make fun of, is what I've become. So know that your kids are listening, even if they're not able to comprehend or understand in the moment. eventually that seed will sprout.
There was a knowing where that line of supporting and enabling is often hard to define.
Yes.
Okay, so you spoke of some adults in your life that weren't like not parents, but adults that and their influence on your life. So how influential and essential were those caring adults in, I guess those interesting points in your life?
As far as Barry or like Sal?
Yeah, it could be, just like the those that were not your parents and still influenced you in a positive way.
Hmm. I think they modeled things in me that I didn't really see growing up, and it's not that those type of models weren't there. It's just that I was pushed and went towards a different direction. So with Barry, it was the light bulb moment to understand that I had been selling myself short. So his support to me was more so just his presence. He didn't even have to say anything. Just his presence, like the saying, our own like unconsciously gives others the right to shine also. His light unconsciously gave me the understanding that I could shine also. And with Sal, well, let me go back to Barry. I remember it was like Barry helped me get into school and I graduated and I was like, Barry, man, what do I owe you? And his only words to me was like, Barry, here, they only gave us like 5 tickets for graduation. I was like, Barry, I want you at my graduation. And above some family members, he was like, James, I can't make it. I said, what I owe you? I owe you, man. What do you, because if, so I take to heart if I owe a debt. If I owe somebody something, I try to make sure I pay that back. I go above and beyond. And he was like, James, you don't owe me anything. Just make sure you do that for somebody else. And to me, that is another reason why I've started to do the work that I do now. And with Sal's always been a sounding board. I'm not gonna say my trajectory has went straight up since I've been home. There's been like stumbling blocks and nothing is linear. But Sal gave me the understanding to always fall forward, always get back up, always dust yourself off, and always get back out there and do it again. I didn't get to where I'm at today by not falling. I just understood there's a difference between falling backwards, which I used to do. I used to go in and out of prison, and falling forwards and learning from your mistakes and going down a different path. So those are 2 of the things that have been instrumental for me with that.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Next one. So as a parent now, how does your life experience impact your parenting style?
Oh God, I have my daughter. Oh my God, this is so different. I have 2 boys and I have my baby, which is my daughter, and this is like it's the best experience, but sometimes I wonder because it's like she can do nothing wrong. It's just like that's my baby. I don't want to hear it. But I guess it's impacted my parenting style because it's the same way that my mother was. I try to build my daughter up. I try to show her unconditional love. I'm always giving her positive messages about herself. And affirmations. I try to feed her affirmations daily. And I try to be the example for her of a relationship, what a man is supposed to be. So it's an experience that if I do anything on the face of the planet right now, the only thing I really want to do, like the greatest achievement I will have achieved, is I will have raised my daughter from beginning to end. And I mean the end of my life. And that will be the best thing that I could possibly be. And I don't mean just raise her, I mean present, be there with her. So that's what I try to do. Just make sure I'm present, make sure I'm there, and Always positive affirmations. Lift her up, boost her up. Mm,
That's wonderful.
yeah.
Um, so you spoke a little bit about your peers moving past you professionally and, you know,
Oh,
after the fact because of what you were going through. So how did that inspire you to push on and kind of kick it into high gears, which is what you ended up doing?
yeah. It's very hard when you come home from being away for so long, and the generation under you has grown up, and now they're married, they're buying houses, they're going on vacations, they're taking trips. And when I came home, I was sleeping on my mother's couch, and it was humiliating. It was it was hard. It was hard. And sometimes people would say, James, let's go out, let's go do something else. Nah, man, I'm good. It's because I wasn't there. So for me, I just came home driven, and I knew what I didn't want anymore, but more so, I knew what I wanted. And it's one thing to know what you don't want. But I always say, if you're always running from something, like, I don't want to be like my father, or I don't want this for my life, or I don't want that for my life. And usually when you're running away from something, you can't see where you're going. So along the way, you're gonna end up running into a brick wall. It's okay to look backwards, but you have to stay focused on where you're going. And for me, it was, I set goals for myself. I wrote a book when I was away, prison. It's called Words, Journey of 1,000 Miles Begins with the First Step. That was my goal in prison. My goal in prison was to finish school, get my GED, get my associate's degree, and hopefully get my bachelor's degree. And my goal was to basically work, get a decent job, make $15 an hour, and find a good wife. And I've been with my wife since I came home. And I achieved all of those things. One of the things I tell people is, especially people who have grown up in environments like I have, is like, it's okay to sit still, and it's okay to, how do I say it? Like, relax for a minute. But our brains are constantly working. And if we stay there too long, what ends up happening is we go backwards. We have to continue to set higher goals. So once I reached the goals that I had set, it was important for me to set other goals. It's just now the goals that I set are more so geared towards social impact opposed to, and I had to get myself sustainable first. So, yeah.
Um, so to talk a little bit more um, about your work, um, first of all, I think it goes without saying that it's amazing and definitely needed.
Yeah.
And it's great that, you know, having gone through what you've gone through, that you still find the strength to want to help those that are still behind those walls. So
Absolutely.
my question is, have you received any pushback with regards to the system with the work that you're doing? Or has it been like
Uh,
embrace?
I haven't received too much pushback from the system. Sometimes you'll go in and you'll get a little bit of pushback, but for the most part, I've received a lot of support. And I think people who are involved with the system, they get it. They can see the holes that are in the system. I would say those closest, this came from a mentor of mine, Glenn Martin, those closest to the problem are close to the solution, but furthest from the resources and power. So, and I'm speaking to correctional officers, they are close to the system also. They see it day in and day out. So you have a lot of correctional officers that understand that something needs to change with the system, but they're just not in the position to be able to do so. Sometimes the hardest pushback that I've gotten have been from some of the individuals that I've grown up with, or from some of the individuals that I've tried to help. And there's a thing called Plato's Cave. I don't know if you're familiar with Plato's Cave, but it's important to let your light shine so others can see it, but you also have to be careful with who you let that light shine to sometimes, because some people it exposes darkness, and some people aren't comfortable with that, so they'll try to put that light out. So the most of the pushback that I've gotten has not come from government or people in the Department of Corrections. It's actually come from people that I've grown up with.
Yeah. And the fact that your job continues, that you continue to have this role and whatever, means that there's a lot of work still to be done. So what would you say if you had a wish list in terms of what can be done for those behind bars with access to education and things like that? Like, what would you have on that wish list?
The hottest thing is we have right now, we have approximately 85, 90, it's probably more now because the data is a little bit dated that I'm referencing from. Around 85, 90,000 people taking post-secondary education and certification training programs behind the walls. That's at the associate's level. Once we get to the bachelor's level, that number drops significantly. And then upon release, like, nobody knows what's happening to these individuals. On average, it takes somebody 10 years to finish an associate's degree behind walls, 20 years to finish a bachelor's degree, because it's not like they're going into a college campus that has all of this space, or they have online capabilities, whereas though they have multiple course offerings. Course offerings are offered 1-2 classes a semester, and the closer and because there's limited space availability inside Department of Correctional Education. So the closer you actually get to your degree, the fewer courses you need to complete. And if those courses aren't being offered, you have to wait till the next semester until that course offering. So what happens is a lot of people are not finishing that education behind the walls. They're looking to finish upon release though. The hard thing is that taking courses behind prison walls are not the same thing as taking them outside prison walls, because there's a thing that I like to call life on life's terms. And when you're released from prison, it shows up relatively quickly. And you're faced with a lot of the issues that you were faced with prior to going to incarceration. You have people who are coming home to homelessness. You have people who are coming home jobless and need to figure it out relatively quickly. You have people who are struggling with chemicals addiction and substance abuse and mental health issues. So if I had my wish list, I would have something that dealt with the number one issue, which is housing for individuals coming home. The only thing that we have readily available here in Rhode Island is there's substance abuse housing for individuals. But in many cases, these individuals have been away from substances for 5, 10, 15 years. They've been away from substances longer than some of the people working in these treatment places. And we're also taking individuals who have been away from this lifestyle, and then there's other individuals that are coming into these places that are straight from the street. And we're putting these individuals together, and it's only a matter of time for this background affects this background, and something needs to give. So I would have some sort of housing that we provide educational programming in. These people would be able to take educational classes in their housing, opposed to going to the campus. And from there, we would slowly transition them back out into society. Makes sense. Sorry. This is
No, that's great. And so this is almost last question. So going back to the youth that we deal with, and thinking back to young James and thinking back to just teenagers now, quicksand is, you understand the concept of quicksand, where you get deeper and deeper and you try to pull yourself out. So how can somebody that's heading down the wrong path and motivate themselves to change their trajectory?
Oof.
In your opinion?
I always think we need others. There's no way we can do this alone. We all need each other. I guess my mother sent me a baby picture when I was in prison, and me and my son look identical. If you saw my son, you'd be like, wow, that's definitely your son. She sent me a baby picture, and I thought it was my son. And I looked at this picture and I was like, I would never in a million years allow what happened to me or to happen to him. It's my child. I'm gonna do everything I can to protect him. I would not allow him to sell drugs. I would not allow him to miss school. I would not, I would like, really, James, you're going to school. No, that's my son's name. No, you're not doing, if he's on the corner trying to sell any substances, you best believe I would be out there on that corner, and no, this is not happening. I love my son, and I would never allow that to happen to him. Turns out the picture that she sent me wasn't my son. It was me. I just didn't know it. And I thought about that for a moment, because I was like, I would never allow that to happen to my son. Why would I allow that to happen to myself? Why would I allow myself to even engage in that? What's wrong with me? Why don't I care about myself as much as I care about my son? Why don't I love myself as much as I love my son? Why would I settle for less for myself that I wouldn't allow to happen to my son? And I had to figure that out. I had to figure out why I was settling for less. I had to figure out that I mattered. And I think for people coming up, for youth who coming up and going down the wrong road, it's coming at you from every different direction. It's glamorized in our music now. It's glamorized in everything. But at the end of the day, if you wouldn't want that for your child, right? And if you have children, or if you aspire to have children, you have to ask yourself, is this something that I want for myself? If you wouldn't allow your child to do that, why would you want that for yourself? We're better than that. And that's the concept I came with. I'm not better than anybody else. That's not what I mean. But I'm better than selling myself short, knowing full and well I have the potential to do and be anything I want to be, as long as I'm willing to put the work into it. So that's what I would tell them.
It's powerful. So my last question is, how can someone get involved in your cause, in this cause, whether it's through your organization or locally here in Coatesville?
Ooh, I'm not sure too much about Pennsylvania. If you ask me about Baltimore, I could tell you.
I mean, like general information of how, if it's a matter of looking for certain policy or.
That's, yeah. I would say right now the prison numbers are going down. There was 2.5 million people incarcerated. One of the things that I noticed, because I worked at the Nonviolence, it was a youth program, and people don't understand. I was really trying to get them to do this here in Rhode Island. I was trying to get them to understanding youth suspension and the issues that youth were having were kind of tied. And I know this because I know a lot of the kids that we work with. I knew their parents, and a lot of their parents, the most problematic children who are going through the most, a lot of their parents were incarcerated. And I tried to explain to people, youth are having a lot of issues, not only when their parent is removed, but also when their parent is getting ready to come home. So I was trying to get them to understand that we have to look at some of these issues, and that is at the school departments, showing up to these meetings, that is with policy, showing up to the State House, that is holding our legislators accountable. One of the things that happened here in Rhode Island recently is we've had a rally in response to George Floyd and the recent uprisings. Over 10,000 people showed up downtown Providence, which is unheard of because Rhode Island is like the smallest state in the union. And a lot of this was led by youth. You guys have a lot more power than you think you have. Your voice is heard a lot more than you may think it is. in the rally, I was there with my son, I was there with my niece, and I was there with his girlfriend and her boyfriend. And I was like, my job, I felt it was to protect them, because I know when you have large amounts of people, you have to kind of be careful, usually when you're coming and going, because this is when stuff happens. And I was like, come on, and we were getting ready to leave, and I was like, come on, I got you, so I'm gonna help you navigate out of here. And my son was like, Dad, let's go this way. And I had to take a step back for a minute, and I had to let him lead me. And as a result of that, I realized he got me out of there 10 times quicker than I could have got them out of there. His route was 10 times better than my route was. And actually, what I could see is I was behind them, so I could see everything that was happening in front of them. If I was in front of them, I could see nothing that was happening back then. So I had to let them lead. And I think one of the things that we need to do, and I think I would encourage you to do, is to step up into your power and step up into your leadership role. A lot of us are just wanting and waiting for you to do so.
Thank you for that. Well, I'm done with my questions. If anyone else has questions, feel free to ask at this time. If not, then is it okay if if they have questions that they want to ask you personally, can they email you?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. And I'll make sure to add that on your email
Mhm.
address. Okay, well, it's 2:00, it's past 2:00, it's 2:02. So just want to respect everybody's time. So thank you guys so much for attending. And if you're interested in more things like this, we're going to continue to do that. But even if you're interested in hearing more from James or whatever, let us know and we will bribe him a lot to come back and talk to us. But yeah, I just want to say thank you again so much for taking this time to come. And thank you, Mr. James, for giving us your time and giving us your story.
Thank you.
So
Appreciate it. I consider it to be my blessing. Everything you do for somebody else is exactly what you do for yourself. So thank you. Thank you, everybody, for having me.
thanks.
Be safe. Be safe.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.